Welcome to the show, Kelsie. I'm really excited to have you on because we're going to be diving into your story around a hardship and that being like what that was, how you maybe didn't realize what was going on. Going back to last week's podcast I had about conscious relationships and maybe being more in this not less conscious in the sense of you didn't know what you were doing or like why you were there, but the fact that so many of us, including myself, can be in relationship and not know the signs that are red flags because we come so accustomed to loving someone and giving them the chances and we see their potential because we love them so much. And that's really what we're going to dive into on today's podcast is those red flags, how to find it or see it or what to look for. The puppies are going to give in their sense as well as always. And we are we are going to just learn from experience. So
yay, I'm so excited.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for being here and being willing to tell your story and what's going to go on. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself and just kind of explain where you were when we first chatted compared to where you are now.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Kelsie. I am from Michigan. Isabel and I went all the way back to elementary school together. And I currently live in Florida as a special ed teacher. Love my job, love the kids. When Isabel and I first talked, was that like a year ago? I was still in Michigan. I went to school in Marquette at Northern. I had just graduated with my special ed degree, and I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And I took this job in Kingsford and lived with my dad, which learned a lot about myself in that experience. I would say in comparison to when we first talked, I am in a much healthier place. I have a much more clear mindset. I'm a lot more confident in myself and just in that growth mindset of how we can keep moving on from the things that we experience and the things that we go through. So again, I'd say I'm in a much better place and I'm super excited to be here.
Yay. I'm really excited to hear about where you've come since then because we've kept in touch here and there. And I've seen that you've moved and that you've like shifted and you're in a new relationship. So it's really exciting to see how when we take control of what we want to do with our lives, take the risk and just see what happens, we can most often than not go through a little bit of transition pains, but end up being in a better spot than we were before. So
Absolutely.
I'd love for you to just hop in wherever you want with what you've learned, what you have overcome, like what your experience was.
Okay. Do you want me to start from the very beginning?
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I had met this guy. We were talking for a few months. He had 2 kids and, I didn't realize it at the time, but coming from divorced parents, I so badly wanted, like a strong family, a family that could, sit down and eat dinner together. I craved that so badly. So I was like, oh, I can, nurture and love on his kids and we can create this family together. And in the beginning, it was just so loving and fulfilling. And it was truly wonderful. It felt good to have that family in my life. And then, as time goes on, you get more involved. And I started to get more involved. I was taking care of the kids more. I was babysitting. I was making them lunches, doing homework with them, truly as that mother figure. And I loved it. You really start to care for them and love for them. But then that also prohibits you from viewing, things that might actually be going on in a relationship. I was ignoring those red flags that I should have noticed from the guy I was in a relationship with. And it was because I so badly wanted that family aspect, but I also wanted to love on those kids. So I was, oh, he did that, it's fine. Um, we'll overcome this. And I, in that relationship, it was very unhealthy now that I look back at it. There were a lot of red flags. And that's one thing that I strongly, strongly would like to talk about is how to look at those red flags and how to, can you hear the birds now?
I love them. It's so peaceful.
How to look at those red flags and internalize them in the moment, rather than when it's too late. So while in that relationship, there were red flags of, one red flag then turned into many red flags. But you're so deep that I also realized that I want to fix people. I love my job of teaching them and helping kids become better people and, future citizens of this world. So that is my passion, to help people. But I quickly learned that I can't fix them, and that's okay. But that was, when I was in that relationship, I just kept trying to fix him. I kept trying to fix him, and it wasn't really going anywhere. So I would say the physical abuse was, one red flag, where it starts with something really, really little of, he threw a pillow at me. Okay, well, that it was minor. It didn't hurt. He didn't mean it. He was just angry at the time. But realizing that, when things like that occur, they're most likely just going to get worse. And again, my goal is to help people overcome that and realize that, trying to prevent that from getting worse and getting out of those situations. Because then that physical abuse or that emotional abuse, can turn into sexual abuse. So there were a lot of things that I went through within that relationship, including physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And when you're in that moment, you look back or from the outside and be like, how can you stay? How can somebody stay in that relationship? But most times it's very manipulative. And when you're in that situation, you don't realize it until you're out of it. So, I, again, didn't realize what was occurring and how I was being manipulated. And there was a lot of love bombing too, which is another thing that I would love to talk about on how to signs of love bombing. So for an example, whenever I would receive flowers or a gift, a big gift like presents, or a ring or something, I slowly but surely towards the end made the connection that he had done something that he felt guilty about, such as cheating. There were many occurrences that I would catch him cheating. And it was that love bombing after of, I didn't mean it. I love you. I'm going to gift you with all of these things and spend all this time with you. And then they do truly make you feel loved. And then it's just an occurring cycle. So overcoming those things has been tough, but I'm so proud of how far I've come and the things that I've learned. In the beginning, I always thought, how could this happen to me? And now my mindset has shifted of, I'm so glad, because now I have the opportunity to help others go through things like this. And it's such a blessing.
Oh my gosh. So let's just take a minute to let all of that sink in real quick. And everyone just take a deep breath in and out of the nose. And even reflect upon moments that you may have experienced in your own relationships that were those red flags, the small little abusive moments, or the little controlling tidbits, or the little narcissistic tendencies, whatever it may have been that started as small that you're like, oh, like that's nothing. It's just like they're irritated, because we can so easily, like you said, Kelsie, like let people act how they need to when we love them and when we have space for them, when we're that nurturer, when we want to help fix them. So like, oh, there's a problem, I'm totally gonna stay for this one.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got a broken doorknob, I got you, let me go make that work. But no matter how many times we change the door handle, the door doesn't open because it's just something else is behind the door keeping it blocked, and it's not actually on us to fix it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I love that you were able to work through that, and the fact that you're so ahead of it in the sense of like, gosh, how do I want to say this? How you were like, I'm happy it happened to me. Wow. Like, in order for you to say that means that a lot of healing has taken place. That's proof of it, because there's not blame. And of course, there could be anger, frustration, or like, man, that was a little lame that happened. But I'm sure that you're not just focusing your energy on blaming that person, because if there's blame, then it's because we're still in those emotions. So the healing really proves that when we take away the blame, we can sit with ourselves. We go, we're just trying to do our best. We were just acting and trying to fix because that's what we saw growing up. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that you can come to that space and be the one to teach others about how to overcome those. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. What was I gonna say? Oh, and so in the beginning, like you said, there was a lot of frustration of like, and hatred. Um, and I, slowly realized that putting that energy towards hating him or being frustrated with him wasn't helping my case at all. And at the end, I'm the most important thing. So I started to work on myself and where this stemmed from. Okay, why did I always feel the need to fix him? Or why did I allow him to treat me like that? Like, what do I need to fix internally so that I can prevent that from ever happening again?
Preaching to the choir. So I would love to hear what tools you did use, or like books or resources you went to help you figure out those things about yourself.
Yeah, so I think a big step that I took was when I moved in with my father and my stepmom. I didn't have any friends there. I was, an hour away from my boyfriend. All I did was work and go home. So I had a lot of time to think and process. Whereas when I was still in Marquette, I still had friends, I had distractions. So having that alone time was, in the beginning tough, but soon became a blessing where I took that opportunity where I would every day after school, I would go for a walk and I would sit and I would think to myself or write things down in my phone on just what my thoughts were that day. I would listen to podcasts. That has helped me a ton, is listening to self-growth podcasts. And then afterwards I would reflect on that. How can I help myself with what words and what wisdom I just learned from this podcast? And living with my dad has really helped me realize where this all stemmed from as well, and how I can fix that within myself. So it really took a lot of questioning on um, you really have to dive in deep to yourself. So a lot of time alone, a lot of processing, a lot of writing, listening to things that were positive and gave me wisdom. But most importantly, that alone time where I had nothing but to think and process and heal. And it was really freaking tough. There's no denying that. The healing process is not easy, but it's so worth it.
Yes, it is. I resonate so freaking deep on the alone time. That is the most crucial part, in my opinion, for the healing process to take place, to happen fully, and so that we can actually integrate it into our lives. Because you can listen to a podcast, you can read a book, you can do all these things, but are we actually taking it in and trying to integrate it into our lives through actions, through practices, through our routines and rituals? And so the fact that you're able to come away from the relationship, be in a space that's completely neutral, it's a new zone, there's nothing there to distract you, like you said, that's what I found helped me the most. I like when I moved to Alaska, it was me and the dogs, and that was my little I called it my soul's winter hibernation or something like that. And through that process, it was really learning why I was how I was, why I acted how I did, exactly what you said. You just get to know your inner workings. And that's truly the difference between someone who is actively pursuing healing and someone who's allowing it to kind of bypass because they're nervous or a little afraid, or maybe they just don't understand how to keep up with the waves because it's such an ebb and flow of the good days and then the regression and then the great days and then a really big regression. Like it's never going to be this linear path. Unlike any.
Yeah. I realized that quickly. Because when I started my healing process in Marquette, I still, like I said, I had distractions. So when I would deeply, deeply feel something, I would distract myself, which did not allow me to process it appropriately. So, when I moved with my father and I only had myself and him, it was very different. There was no running away from those feelings. So it's beautiful though. It is. Healing's great.
It is. Please go and heal everyone. It is crucial to our well-being. But
Yeah.
did you find yourself trying to practice what you're learning with your dad as like a way to help and initiate it, integrate it?
Yes. My dad, I would like come home and, I always listened to a podcast on the way home and I, would process it and whatnot. And then I would, go have dinner with my dad and just like blab about how I can like integrate this into my life. And he was like, I've never seen this part of you. And I was just so happy and excited about it. And so that was really nice too. Yeah.
Oh, I
to
love
have him there.
Yes.
So one thing that, do you mind if I want to talk about like the red flags?
Please dive into
Okay. So, and of course, every relationship's different. Every person's different. So I understand that it might be different for everybody. But the first few things that I noticed was I started to hang out with my friends less and less. And if I wanted to go out to dinner with a friend or go, get a few drinks with them, it was a really, really big deal. And I, when I was with him, I also had a lot of internal things that I didn't realize were there yet. So I always thought that was, he loved me. He really wants to spend time with me and he wants to spend all of his time with me. And, how can I say no to that? And that's a red flag when they don't allow you to go spend time with others, because now that I'm in a healthy relationship, it's extremely important to have that. And I feel, big 50-50 of having friend time and relationship time. I think that's really important, whether it's Zooming with your friends or getting a drink or whatever it may be. Those friend relationships are really important. So that was my first red flag, was not having that separate life outside of him and his kids, and that's not healthy.
I completely agree with that. That is one of the most, that's one of the worst misconceptions of relationships these days. We feel like, oh, this person's dating me, they're all mine, this is great, but you're suffocating. You're not actually going after your goals at this point because you're so intertwined with one another that it's, well, if I change, then you have to change. But if I don't want to change in that way, then neither of us can change. So then you're just stuck in this really like murky molasses and you don't get to watch from the sideline and be a cheerleader. Plus, when you have time apart, which y'all coming from me, Libra rising, I had the worst problem with being so clingy and being like, give me all of you all the time. I need this, high standards, high demands because of the lack of love I received as a child in the way that I wanted it, as an expectation I had set for myself that was unrealistic. And when we can learn about that part of ourselves and know, okay, how can I communicate this? How can I healthily ask for love in times when I really do want it? And how can I be okay with learning how to spend time alone and going on dates by yourself. So like you said, spending that alone
Mhm.
time is where you allow for new ideas to come in, allow for ourselves to explore who is Isabel, who is Kelsie, like who are these people for their soul, and what's gonna keep you that way. Because a partner typically isn't in your life because they want to see themselves in the mirror, which is what happens when
Right.
you're with each other all the time. They're with you because they love the different parts of you, the things that make you you outside of them. Like in my relationship now, I can tend to be a little bit more confident and speak more of my truth more often, whereas my partner has a little bit more of a subtle way of doing it, is how I like to put it. So it's a great balance for us to learn, all right, when is like a good time for him to speak his mind and be truthful? When's a good time for me to maybe not speak so
Right.
much for the betterment? So great,
Right.
great way to hit on that point.
And as you talk about speaking for yourself, or having that open communication, that was another red flag, is when you feel that you can't openly communicate with your partner in fear of them getting mad or angry. I also, that was another red flag that I did not realize. And another healthy part of a relationship is being able to communicate and never fearing what's going to happen when you express what's on your heart. So one other thing that another red flag that I would definitely look out for is some, it's very important to communicate
Mhm.
openly.
Yes. Did you ever have an instance where you felt something, you wanted to speak to something that didn't resonate with you that they had done, and you were like instantly shut down for it or denied the time and space to talk about it?
Yes, and unfortunately, he would use his kids a lot as using that against me. Of I would express what's on my mind. Of I didn't like when you did that, or and it would be like, we can't talk about this right now. I have to do this with the kids, or you can't talk about this in front of the kids, or you know, I did that because of the kids, and it wasn't a healthy. It was always being shut down, not always about the kids, but most of the time was using the kids as an excuse. And then there were a lot of times when I didn't say anything at all in fear of that physical or emotional abuse that I would receive. And when that builds up, and that's not healthy either.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And then the fear begins to build up in parts of us, and that typically is seen as chronic pain, some sort of stiffness in the body, a part of us that just goes cold or numb. And it becomes so natural to be in that state that when you actually extract yourself from that situation, it's it's like you almost go through birth all over again. Like you come out a clean baby
Yeah.
right out the womb.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Um, it's and that can be, we can talk about that next, is how my past relationship affects my current relationship. And what I've learned through that as well. So another red flag, yep, red flag, open communication. If there's no communication, especially when they don't allow you to talk about it.
Yes.
And then another thing that can really affect is, I withdrew myself from my family and my friends because I didn't want them to see the hurt that I was feeling, in
Mhm.
fear that they would hate him, because he was my boyfriend and I didn't want, my friends or family to not like him.
Mhm.
So I never talked about how I was feeling with my friends or family either. And then I withdrew myself. So not only do you know, internalize everything from the relationship that you're not able to communicate, but you don't, you lose all those connections that you might have prior had. Which is also, if you see another red flag is if you see yourself kind of pulling away from people that you love, um, because of the relationship with you're in. Like, can definitely be eye-opening as well.
Yeah, it's basically trying to save the reputation of the partner
Mm-hmm.
so that people will like them and not see
Yes.
the real deal. And it's not our job to do that. But as
Yeah.
partners, we often want to, because if we don't if we're not liked, then we are not a part of society. And if we're not a part of a society, then we feel alienated. And it's a whole cycle in itself. And that's just a really small part of the relationship bit. Wow. So we have red flags, and let's go over the red flags. And then I want you to explain what kind of relationship you're in now, and then how the effects of the past and the present are kind of working together.
Yeah. Okay. So my current relationship, very, very healthy. But I also continue to learn a lot about myself through this relationship. The beginning was the hardest because, you know, I felt very confident in myself and I was healing and things were going great. But then when you get into a new relationship, things pop up from the previous relationship that might not be healed because you didn't know that it was something that needed to be healed. So I'm continuously learning in that aspect too. And some things can include the smallest things of like he lets me go and hang out with my friends, which is very, very healthy. And in the beginning, I was like, you know, you'll let me do that? Like, oh my goodness. And that's not something that you should have, like, that should be a healthy thing. That should be a very normal thing. And that was not normal for me. So that, things like that are a huge adjustment. The open communication that he's always willing to have with me at any point. If I have anything on my mind, he's very calm with me. He listens. And I was not used to that either. I had to build a lot of trust within myself. As my past, he always cheated on me. And there were many times when I would physically catch him. And so just trusting within myself and within my new relationship that, he would never do that for me and that he's there for me. And not just the benefits that he might get out of me, like my previous relationship. So, jumping into a new relationship is another healing process in itself.
Absolutely. Last night in my own relationship, we had another moment. Like, I'm always trying to advocate for conscious relationships, and that does not mean you will never fight with your partner. Like, it means you're gonna fight and it's gonna be okay. And that the feelings of doomsday, or that we can't get in a fight or else this is going to end and then I'll be lonely. And then it's that perpetual fear of being alone because of X, Y, and Z. But it's really being able to muster up the courage to sit with each other and not give in to the silent treatment that we can often revert to when we have a hard time saying what's on our mind, and just saying in a kind and curious way, not trying to blame, not assuming, not coming at it in a defensive manner, but using more of a curious approach that's gentle, that is questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, last night we had a moment. It was at the end of dinner, and like I do something completely different than what my partner does for work. So when we have conversations, like my skills in active listening and talking are a little bit more advanced because of what I do and what I like to do. Whereas he's more of a silent person, thinker, builder, working with his hands. So questions for him don't come so easily. Like, I have a freaking podcast, for crying out loud. I love talking to people.
Yeah.
Like, he could be invisible and be stoked about that. And so we just came to a moment where it was, well, it's hard for me to talk about what I do in a day because I don't know if you're interested. And then I feel bad about not being interesting. And if you're not interesting, then you might not like me. And if you don't like me, what are we doing? This whole
Yes.
spiral. But
Uh-huh.
when you can actually sit and just talk about, hey, this would make me feel more important. Like, how could we practice together to make this more effortless or easier? Like, how could we keep each other accountable? Using some active, healthy ways to implement that. I'd love to hear, anything that you use in your relationship that helps you guys get through those tough moments, or what kind of tactics you guys use.
Yeah, so we make sure to never just let something sit on our chest. We always agree that if there's something bothering us, no matter what we're doing, if we're out to eat, if, even if we're both at work, like just if something's really weighing on us, immediately talk to that person, and talk it out. That way, the more it weighs on you, the more it builds up. And it's just, we found for us, it's best to get it off of our mind right away. And then to really listen to both sides of, how I feel and how that makes him feel, and just really listening. And like you said, none of that blaming going on or making one another feel guilty. But just really respecting how one another feels is really important. And I'm still learning that he's willing to do that, because I was so used to, in my past relationship, holding everything in and not being able to talk about it. So I'm still learning to tell myself, hey, he'll listen to me, so let's talk about it. There's no need to hold it in. And then, what's really been great is he's had to learn to have that extra patience with me because of my past. Just helping him realize that it's not as easy as it sounds from what I've been through. And he's been really great about that too. So just making sure that we communicate everything so he understands. And then I could go on and on. Not having any like huge expectations, like I don't expect him to, say these specific words, if that makes sense. Because then when I expect something, and then I get let down. So just making sure that we both stay very open-minded, we listen, and we're patient.
That's a big one. That's a huge one, especially if you see like the words "I love you" as basically like a stamp of, oh yeah, this is forever. We are never gonna break, blah blah blah. And in reality, in my opinion, that is almost shackling our partners. So something that I used to not be so great at was like learning how to give freedom, I guess. And not that I was ever controlling.
Right.
I rephrase that. I'm sure I was controlling at times, but not that I was intentionally or consciously controlling, but because I was so afraid to be alone that I might try to manipulate or do things that I learned from my parents along the way to make them feel like they were stuck or had to stay or be the same person. When in reality, we're all going to grow. Evolution does not change because we love someone or we get into a relationship. And that's one of the most healthy things you could adopt in moving forward in a relation is you're in a fight and you got to have your foundation down. So addressing, hey, I'm committed to this as long as you're committed to this. Like this fight does not change how I feel, does not make me want to run away, and reassuring our partners if we do come from a background or they come from a background that is abusive or that is very like tug with the heart in the sense of dangling themselves above you like, oh, I can leave anytime and it doesn't matter because you're always going to be here jumping up for the bone. And it's a sick game, but it's wild how we get lost in it. So making sure that we communicate like, hey, you're a free soul. I'm here to support you in whatever you need to do. And even like with our relationship, when we were deep with the puppies and in the truck camper and in the poop and the pee every second and cleaning it up, I told my partner, hey, if you need to go to work for a couple weeks and just work and be alone and do your thing to de-stress, because our suffer levels are different. Like I can suffer to some extremes because of my practice with meditation, and I kind of crave it, which is weird, but that's a different topic. And where he has less experience with that. So giving him that, not even the out, I want to call it, but just the knowing that he could do that and I wouldn't be upset, that can someone like that can change someone's whole entire perspective and mood and feeling about what's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Completely agree with you. And it's a work in progress. And I am a strong believer that I'll always be learning. There's always more for me to learn and grow. So I know I'm not done yet. There's always more.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like when you have spaghetti, you grab one plate and you think it's going to be enough, but then you're so into it, you're like, I need to have 4 more plates. And then you kind of regret it later. But the learning's always going to come. And I love that you have taken it upon yourself to be so active and going from a situation that wasn't so delightful and persevering and getting to know yourself, learning how to heal you so that you could call in that dream partner and go, all right, I do deserve love. I do deserve a healthy relationship. I do deserve to feel good and peaceful and calm. And the fact that you're able to make that shift from a little town in Michigan to a bigger town in Florida, like that sets up the entire stage of, yes, you were ready and able to continue your evolution as a human.
And I truly learned the most about myself from this move. When I did decide to move, I felt very strong about myself, very confident. I knew that I was in a good place. But this has just evolved me even more. It's truly helped me realize, that I have full control of who's in my life. And, when I was in my prior relationship, I didn't feel that like I had that control. I felt like I was stuck with him and I was stuck with the people that I surrounded myself with. And now I know that that's not the case. And if I meet somebody that just doesn't match my energy level and they're not going to do what's best for my life, then I can kindly move on. And that's been the best thing for me because, like I said, I truly felt like I was stuck before, and now I feel very free. And just realizing that we are in control of our lives. You don't have to feel bad for telling somebody like, hey, we just kind of don't match my vibe. You don't have to feel bad for not continuing a friendship with somebody. And that you have full control. You have full control of your emotions, who you surround yourself with, how you handle your emotions. And that's helped me a lot as well.
Couldn't have said that better myself, because that's so crucial, not just in love relationships, but in friendships, knowing who deserves your time and energy. You are only here for so long. You might as well surround yourself with people who make you feel good and who are in that wavelength, who are pursuing growth. That's something that I've witnessed, is that I'm done being a part of communities or people that aren't necessarily actively trying to have a growth mindset or make themselves better or make a legacy for themselves, really. Because if we're not trying to serve ourselves, get right, fill up our cup, how are we ever going to fill up anyone else's cup in a wholesome and generous way? Because we all deserve it. And it could be seen as selfish on the surface to someone, but I listened to Abraham Hicks the other day, and she's saying, it might sound selfish or look selfish to someone when you say, oh, I'm thinking about me, but when they retaliate and go, oh, that's selfish, then they are upset at you for thinking about yourself because you're not thinking about them. And is that not selfish in itself?
Yeah. It's very important to be selfish. I've learned that because another thing I learned from my past relationship, I was not selfish at all. I was very selfless. I gave him everything I had. And I forgot about myself. And, that's the great thing about who I am now, and the new healthy relationship that I'm in, and the new healthy friendships that I have, is that I feel confident enough to be selfish. And that's super important.
I love that. Can you just real quick, as we tie down this podcast, share some of the selfish things that you treat yourself to? What are some things that you do now that you were you would look at as a past you and go, oh my gosh, what are they doing?
Yeah. So, and again, selfish, it looks different for everybody just based off of experiences. But in my past relationship, I paid for everything. I did all of the finances. I was very controlled and manipulated in the finance aspect. And now I confidently and selfishly do things for myself. And it feels so good. I don't feel bad, treating myself to lunch one day because I deserve it. So I selfishly do things that fill my heart and make me happy, such as going and, like I said, getting lunch or treating myself to Starbucks one day. But also like selfishly feeling my emotions. I always was so worried about how that would make him feel, and my ex, how that would make my ex feel. And now I selfishly feel all of my emotions that I can. And I don't feel bad about it because those are my emotions and I'm going to feel what I want to feel. And, just really doing what's best for me. And if you don't like it, sorry.
That's the best thing to ever say to someone. Like, this is where I'm at and I'm sorry, and you can keep walking. That's the easiest way to do it. And like, we can reframe that selfish isn't a negative word. Like,
correct.
We grow up thinking, oh, that person's so selfish. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, good for them. They know what they want. They know what they need. And they know how to basically be happy and choose to be in their happiness.
Yeah, because I'm selfish and I put myself first and I make sure that I'm fulfilled, it allows me to fulfill others and help better other people and put energy into others. Because before, I wasn't putting energy in myself, and then I was putting all my energy into the wrong people.
Yes.
But now that I put myself first, it allows me to be a better person towards others as well. Which is why I'm here, because it's now, now that I've come so far in my healing journey, it's not about oh no, this happened to me. It's how can I help others feel better about this who also have experienced it? How can I take my experiences and help them?
Yes, the mindset reframe. That's where it starts. And it all starts with us within. And that's the best place we can ever work, because everything outside of us, it's a variable. We don't know how it's going to end up or react or act in the first place. So we know that by coming into ourselves, we know how we can react and act and participate and consciously choose or create. And that's the easiest place to start anyways. So bring all that control and energy back to us, and we got free sailing. And I forget who says it, but you give yourself to all and you're depleted of your energy, but you give yourself to yourself, and gosh, I'm slaughtering it. But something basically what you just said, that you give yourself the energy, you can give energy. It's like when you make money, you can give money to things that you care about and help those things continue on versus the things that you don't align with. And so,
right. And, part of the healing process, when you experience such abuse in any form, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, any form of abuse, as you're healing, it's really hard to not put the blame on yourself. I did this, which caused him or her to do this. And when you put the blame on yourself, it's not only, it makes it very difficult to be selfish and to heal, and to selfishly give yourself what you may need. And so just remembering that when you experience those things, it's not your fault. You're not the one to blame, and you will overcome this, and it'll take time. Those are, my biggest pieces of advice to people that have gone through things like this is it's not your fault, not at all. And that took me a long time to realize.
Yes. Especially because we think in our society, everything is instant gratification. It's automatic. Amazon can deliver your stuff in 2 hours these days. Ay, ay, ay. And so we think that's how everything needs to be. In reality, that's not realistic. So remember that you're human. You're not a robot. Give yourself the time. There's never a time limit or frame to healing. Like Kelsie said earlier, I don't think this is ever going to stop. Like, there's just so much we can keep improving on. And if you think about it, if we do the work now, how are our kids gonna be when they come? Like how influential can we be when that happens? Because for me, I only really want to give life if I can properly inform them and act around them and influence them and be in my power all the time. And I'm still learning how to hone that down. And these tips and going through the red flags and just knowing like what's the difference between a healthy conscious relationship and one that's not as healthy, that's abusive, that is just a little on the neglective side, it's a huge game changer. So thank you so much for being here today, Kelsie.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It feels good to, hopefully this reaches somebody that can benefit from this and realize that it'll all be okay. We'll persevere and that they're worth it.
Yes. Ah, well, thank you so much. Beautiful words to end on. Everyone out there, whoever you are, we are thinking of you, and whatever you're going through, know that you can overcome it, that you got this, that you can be that person for somebody else who's hurting in the future if you give yourself the time of day now. So be selfish. Remember that you deserve to be happy, healthy, loved, and it all starts with you. So thank you guys so much for listening today. Thank you, Kelsie, for showing up with us today. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.